Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. At last, we are back and I'm so happy to be back in the workshop. I've been cleaning up all morning and I can't wait because today we're finally working on the hinges again. We are going to keep cracking on. We're going to be drilling holes, doing more grinding, doing more finishing. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'm so pleased that we're back. I loved the shooting trip, but it feels good to be home. Thanks for watching. So here is the box, and here are the hinges as they stand now. Obviously, the last thing that I did, if I recall correctly, was making these bends match this top, which is fantastic, and here they are just kind of sitting around, chilling out, and having fun on the box. Part of why I've got them up here on the box is I want to work out where is the best place for these screws to go. Yes, I'm going with screws. I think I don't want to go any closer to the edge of this side of the box than like 3/4 of an inch or so. 7/8 of an inch, so I'm gonna just do like a rough little idea on the flat sides of where a screw might go, and then on the bottom, like, you know, it can go anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. So I've got a little rough idea with the chalk. I also want to know where exactly the lid starts on that piece. I got a little Sharpie mark there, so I know that basically 3/4 of an inch or more down, we're good to go with a screw hole. I can also look at the pattern, and I can see that it's gonna work pretty well with the Damascus pattern too. Looking here at the top side of the hinge leaf, I can see that really, so long as I'm like 3/4 of an inch away from this right here, I'm gonna be good. I'm in plenty thick material on the actual lid of the box, so that's all good. And of course, I can do whatever I want at the end. So on this one piece in the light, I can see that the explosions in the pattern, there's one explosion right here, one explosion right here. So thankfully, my chalk line is right in the middle of the two. Now, I can also assume from this that on the other side of the hinge leaf, it is also the same. And so I know that if I take the same measurement, I'm gonna be roughly right in between the two explosions with the screws on either side. So I really spent some time making sure that I am marking out the holes precisely where I want them, where it's gonna look as good aesthetically, proportionally, it all works with the proportions of the box. I'm really taking my time to make sure that this is gonna be as good as possible, which is great. All the lines are scribed up, used blue Dicom, scribed everything up. I'm ready to go into the mill and drill the holes once I've center punched it, but first, I need a countersink, so I'm gonna go buy a countersink. Thank you, appreciate it. You know the drill. Eating time. Ooh. The magic of editing is rather good. I've finished eating and now it's back to work. I'm gonna center punch the holes, we're gonna run into the mill, and we're gonna drill and countersink every single one. All the holes for the screws have been drilled and countersunk, and it went great. I was concerned that the steel would be a little bit harder, but I guess leaving it in the forge overnight from it being hot, it cooled it down slow enough that everything was super soft. Drill went in fine, countersink, even though it's a cheapo from a local tool store, that went in fine too, so I'm very pleased about that. Now obviously I still have the scale finish on most of this. I now need to get all the surfaces to a 120 grit, so this is going to be a little bit tricky because there are all sorts of fun little shapes that I've got to get into. I'm going to be using a small wheel attachment on the belt grinder to get into certain areas. Aside from that, I'm going to take my time, bring it up to 120, and then it's going to be a case of moving on to heat treating once all of that is done. I mistook step 2 for step 1. Step 1 is going to be I'm going to take an angle grinder and I'm going to trim off the excess, and then I'm going to grind it to a radius that works. I took my calipers at 120 millimeters and I drew an arc. I'm going to match that arc, grind that radius in all 4 pieces, then we'll go to the 120 grit. initially as with all of my Damascus pieces, so I get a slightly better contrast. I do heat treat them. So I harden it in oil and then I temper it. Now, I have this one piece where there is sadly a delamination, where it just quite hasn't welded too well. And that's an issue. There's not only a delamination on the side, there's delamination up here near the actual barrel of the hinge. And if I harden this, I really run the risk of that delamination opening up, causing a crack, and the pieces falling in half. Structurally, it's gonna, it could hold on the doors of a bomb shelter just now and it would be perfectly fine. For a box, it's still going to be perfectly fine. I have no issues with the general structural integrity, but I'm gonna sacrifice a little bit of the contrast of the pattern so as to keep them together. It's still gonna look sick. And of course, as you might have noticed, there was a little bit of controversy after the last video when I decided I'd be using slot head screws. I'd like to reassure you, it is going to still look good. The slot head screws that I have, nice and simple. Have a look at this, and you can see that they're gonna look great. With a little extra finishing work on each of the heads, I think they're gonna look fantastic. Of course, you're more than welcome to disagree if you still think it looks bad, but I think your mind's gonna be changed when this is all done. Anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for being here today. In terms of what I've learned today, I've learned that the longer you invest time in a project, especially when it's kind of the finer detailed stuff like this, the slower every single step takes, because every single time there's more worry, more desire to make it right and not have a mistake, and that means that every single step is taking even longer so that I make sure that I'm not making mistakes, I don't have to start over again, and I still have fun while doing it, which is very, very good. Tomorrow's video is going to be finishing these entire hinges. So tomorrow I'm gonna go up to 240 grit, then I'm gonna go to 400 grit, and then we're gonna etch them. Once they're etched, we're then going to rivet on phosphor bronze pins. It's gonna be a fantastic day. I can't wait to have finished hinges for you tomorrow. Be sure to check out the 2 videos that have been up there on the screen, and most of all, have a fantastic day. Fabulous to have you back here in the workshop. Bye-bye.